Good afternoon and welcome to today's webinar, Leadership, Change or Get Out of the Way. My name is Stephanie Hurst. I'm the Member Programs Manager here at the National Apartment Association. Thanks for joining us today. Before we get started, I want to go over a few housekeeping points. This presentation is being recorded and will be available on NAA's website next week. During the presentation, you can type your questions into the chat box on your screen and we'll share them with our presenter. We've left time at the end for questions. And now I will turn the microphone over to Eric Williams, a member of NAA's Next Gen Committee. Eric?
Hey everybody, good afternoon. Thank you so much for the introduction. My name is Eric Williams, Director of Marketing with RPM Living, as well as a Next Gen Committee member located in beautiful Atlanta, Georgia. And I have the pleasure of introducing our two incredibly talented speakers, Mindy Price and Stephanie Graves. I'm going to go just a little bit further just to show you guys how talented these two women are. Mindy Price has spent over 2 decades wearing a plethora of hats, acquiring a unique set of skills, making her an expert in property and associate management, while also serving as an experienced property owner, supplier partner, and educator. She's a prolific national speaker and NAAEI faculty member. Price hosts multiple different podcasts, including Multifamily Leaders Podcast, a bi-weekly half-hour segment that offers listeners insightful tools and the latest information about the industry. She also hosted the radio show, The Real Estate Roundtable, and is the founder of the Bruce May Memorial Tournament, which benefits the PTSD Foundation of America / Camp Hope. Recognized by the Houston Apartment Association, she is the 2022 Vice Chairman of Education for NAA's National Supplier Council. And Mindy also currently serves as the Vice President of Sales for J. Turner Research, the leading full-circle online reputation management firm that empowers clients with data to drive revenue. And joining her in today's discussion, we have Stephanie Graves, a multifamily professional with over 25 years of real estate experience. With a diverse background incorporating on and off property experience, she has served in positions including Director of Business Development, Vice President of Training and Marketing, as well as Senior Vice President of Operations for a portfolio of over 30,000 units across 8 states throughout the country. She's the founder of Q10 Property Advisors, a group of industry professionals that advise and educate multifamily professionals throughout the country. I'm not sure how either of these talented women do it with such grace, but Stephanie may also moonlight in haberdashery. As you can tell, she is known for wearing multiple hats, serving as the treasurer for the Houston Apartment Association, HAA, and the incumbent president of the board, where she has served on the board of directors for the past 8 years and has graduated from the HAA and Texas Apartment Association, TAA, Leadership Lifetime Program. Also a recognized speaker in our space, you may have seen her on numerous occasions at previous nationwide conferences, such as TAA and our very own NAA, Apartmentalize. Lastly, Stephanie is an alumnus of St. Edward's University in Austin, Texas, and holds the Certified Apartment Management, Certified Apartment Supervisor, designations, and Independent Rental Owner Professional, ROOP, through NAA, and is recognized as a NAA Education faculty member. So I'm so happy to have these two amazing, talented individuals here. And without further ado, let's go ahead and get started.
Wow, I think we need to take Eric on the road with us. I'm just saying.
Right?
Yes, yeah. So thank you so much. We are so super excited. Mindy and I have been visiting and working with each other all week, all month. So excited to have the next gen leadership here. So let's just start off with a poll. If you guys can, we're using Slido. So if you can do a screenshot, get those phones out because I know you're all on them. And we have a poll, simple question. What do you think makes a good leader as we go into this leadership session? So screenshot that. Here, I'm going to get my phone so I can see too. You guys know how to do all this fun little QR codes. We're going to have some QR codes for you later too with some good stuff. Let's see what this looks like. Let me put in my answer. Okay. It's going to do a nice little word bubble here. I think those are what they're called. So if you guys can do a screenshot, this will grow over time and we'll add some more things here. They're coming in. Let's see. So we have compassion, guidance, selflessness. Love these. Good listener. Emotional intelligence. Isn't that a key word right now? I actually just started a book club with my team members on emotional intelligence. Is our first book that we're going to be looking at. Compassion, great communication. I love this one at the end. Great communication, great energy and positivity. So wonderful, wonderful, wonderful. And transparency. We're going to talk a lot about all of these things today. So let's kind of do an overview of what our expectations are. Nothing should surprise you in this session. We're going to let you know where we're going and how we're going to get there. So we're going to discuss and dissect the pitfalls of leaders. You know, we can all say that things have changed because of COVID, but there are solid challenges that we all face as leaders, young and old, that we're going to talk about today and how we deal with those. We're going to also investigate what we need to build leaders and how we delegate to them. You know, indiscriminately just saying you do this and you do this and you do this is not really a successful way of delegating. So we need to talk about empowering them, working through that delegation process. And then motivation. Oh Lord, don't we all need motivation? So as a leader, we need motivation, and we also need to figure out how we motivate our teams in the proper way to get the results that we want out of them and get some satisfaction in their job. And then we're going to identify what some solid leadership styles are for you and for your team members so that we can figure out how to be a part of that leadership journey. So we're going to go over this today. We'll revisit this at the end, but I'm going to turn it over to Mindy so she can run the next poll and we can get started.
Hey, you guys, I am super excited to be here with you today. And I want to ask you all so that we can get a better understanding of who is on the call today, who is on this webinar. If you would go ahead and go back to the Slido, go to the poll and let us know who's here so that as we're going through this, we can really help focus the things that we're going to be talking to you about. And so far, we've got quite a bit of corporate staff that's here, now managers, we've got supplier partners. Hey guys, great to see all of you guys and gals. And then some regionals, we have a few VPs, and I don't see any leasing. I can't tell if there's assistants based on what my screen is showing me, but 50% is corporate staff or other corporate, which I find that to be very interesting, Stephanie, so that we can see, who's on the call and as we go through this and guiding everyone today. So if you don't mind, we're going to finish up this poll. Thank you guys for answering this and giving us an idea. I know that we had a number of those that are in attendance, and we're thankful that you're here. So I want to let you know there are not going to be any Jedi mind tricks today. As Yoda says, none of this there will be. I love Yoda, you guys, and anytime that I can actually put Yoda in a presentation, I do it. Some of you have seen Yoda before with me. Stephanie knows, oh, she's putting in Yoda.
Yes.
But we really, for you all, want to give you actionable information, no matter where you are in your career, whether you're brand new to your leadership journey, or you are somebody who's been doing this for quite some time. There are some challenges that aren't going away, and we want to attack those head on right now. And the first challenge that we want to talk to you about is communication. We're going to talk about 3 different challenges. And what I found interesting, Stephanie, and I'm sure you did as well, that communication actually stayed up in the word bubble as large. And as we know with keyword clouds, it's because it was used several times. So you all get this. So thank goodness, Stephanie, we hit the nail on the head whenever we decided to talk about communication first. And one of the challenges as leaders that we have, and as you grow into leadership, is making sure that you're being heard. A lot of times with communication, as a leader, you're trying to persuade somebody to your way of thinking. But you also have to be a great listener to make sure you understand the way your teams are thinking. And you have to be moldable. You can't just be set in your ways. And so communication and your communication style is going to change over time. But we're going to talk to you about some ways that you can be more of an effective communicator. And then also, one thing that I want to share to our leaders that are out there, for those of you that are on this webinar today, when you write down your nuggets of information, be a river, not a reservoir. Let the information that you have pass through to everybody around you, whether it's somebody that you work with, whether it's somebody that may be in a position below yours or a position above yours. Always be that river and share your information. And so when Stephanie and I were thinking about, do we really want to talk about communication? We went back to some of the studies that J. Turner Research did. And one of those was a 2020 employee morale study. And we looked at when J. Turner asked, how satisfied are you with your company's handling of the coronavirus pandemic? What they found is that at the corporate level, at the executive level, they were pretty satisfied. This was on a scale of 0 to 10. And you can see here that they said 9.33. The executive said that. And then your corporate and your regional said 8.53. And then it dropped down to a 7.52, which survey data, by the way, 7.5 and above is actually considered pretty good. But what I found that was very interesting about this study was the 24% differential between the on-site teams and the executives. What does that mean? Communication. And then you can also see there's that 13% differential between the regionals and on-site. And so we dug in even further and we wanted to see, well, what were the themes that were being said pretty consistently? And you've probably seen this data, you get it. Many of you are boots on the ground, were boots on the ground, and were involved in this in some way, shape, and form. And the biggest thing was compensation, increased workload, and communication. As you all can remember, our on-site teams were asked to do so much more. They were the first responders, if you would, for our residents, but they weren't getting what we heard often was the hazard pay. We're being asked to do more, but what are we getting out of it? And then we see that corporate is able to work from home, but we're not. And there was some animosity that was there. And then on communication, this may surprise you a little bit, is they said it was communication overload. But what was really interesting with that was there was communication overload, but it was corporate passing down information for the on-site teams to pass down to the residents. The overlying thing that stood out to me was the employees that responded saying, but you're not asking me how I'm doing. I'm communicating to the residents, and thank you for that, but you're not asking me how I'm doing. And that was something that was really important and something that we have to be aware of in any situation, is making sure we're aware of how our team members are doing. And that's a big thing as a leader, to understand your team members individually. And so Stephanie and I thought, well, we want to figure out, has this changed? We want to update this data. And so what we did, this is a Stephanie Graves and Mindy Price poll, let's be clear where this came from. We posted this on LinkedIn and on Facebook. And what we found is that the themes were pretty similar, but the numbers dropped as far as the percentage. Executives still said that high 9.16, where it was 9.33 before. Regional still had it rated higher, but in this poll, it dropped some. And then check out on site. It went from a 7.52 to a 6.67. And then that gap was even wider between the on-site teams and the executives at 37%. So clearly, communication is something that we really have to focus on as leaders, because there is a disconnect, not just here, but when I look at the leaders study that Jay Turner does and some of the other amazing companies that are out there in our industry do, there is a disconnect but between what executives think is super important and what on-site teams think is super important. So we've got to close that gap and make sure that we're communicating effectively to all team members within our organization. And one of the things that we're struggling with as a country, as you all know, is trust. And if you look at what the Edelman Trust Barometer says for 2022, is some good news for business. So in business, you are in a position where there's more trust, where as a nation, because of the political climate that we're all in, I mean, how many of you have been on Facebook or even LinkedIn, and there's still a lot of the negativity or some things that are out there where you're like, is it true or is it not? But in business, there tends to be a little more trust that's there, and you want to build teams that trust you and that trust each other. And the way you do that is by providing consistent fact-based information. And here's something that I think you'll really appreciate when you see how much trust impacts your business and profitability. And so compared with low company trust, so those companies that have higher trust, it's been reported, check out the stress, 74% less stress. Stephanie, I don't know about you, but if I could, take my stress level down 74%, I mean, come on.
Yep. 10% would be great.
10%. But high trust organizations, their stress levels are lower. Look at the satisfaction with their lives. Remember on that employee morale study where they said, ask me how I'm doing. Understanding how your team members are doing outside of work is also important. It's really important these days as a leader. And then check out the energy at work. Goodness gracious, having that much more energy and then 50% higher productivity. If we could get 20% higher productivity, but 50%, that's pretty incredible. And so some goals for us to strive for. And then fewer sick days are being used and 40% less burnout. If we were in an audience right now, Stephanie, I know that if we asked for people to raise their hands, did you get burnt out during the pandemic? Did you think about changing careers? Did you reevaluate your life? I think we would see a lot of hands. You can do your hands in the chat if you want. Eric's monitoring it for us. We know that there's burnout. But when you have trust, because you feel like you can have that open dialogue and communication, and the information that's being presented to you is factual, or they're going to find out the answer to those questions, it really is going to help the employee engagement. It's going to help productivity. And so one way, actually 5, that you all can work on communication, 5 effective techniques here from the Centers of Creative Leadership, is they say communicate relentlessly. For what matters, I want to add too, right? It's super important that you do that. And then simplify and be direct. I have to work on this one. I'm going to be real with you always. Sometimes I overcomplicate things, and I have to work on it in a way personally that's going to make sense for each person that's on my team and who I'm working with, so that they really know what is the goal and why. And in order for me to understand, and in order for you to understand, you have to listen. Listening is huge. And we're going to talk about some ways that we can all become better listeners, and encouraging input, because it's not just what your thoughts are. It's also about understanding what the needs of your team members are. And then illustrating through telling stories. I love this. And if you guys haven't attended Lisa Trozine's, she's got several sessions that she does on how to be a better storyteller. There's other wonderful speakers that are out there that do. You can create a bond with your team members and those around you just in general by being able to tell stories that they can relate to. And so I highly recommend that you really start to sharpen that skill. And then affirming with actions. Do what you say. Practice what you preach. Don't just say it. Show your team members that they're there. There is no job in this industry that is beneath any of us that are on this webinar today. And so one of the things or pitfalls that we also see with communication is saying no too often. Grumpy Cat over here doesn't like no. Stephanie, I bet you don't like hearing no. And so instead of saying no and shutting down the communication, you want to ask why questions. You want to understand what is it that your team member actually needs that you could help them with, and you can come to some form of common ground instead of just saying no. You never know by opening up the conversation what you can uncover so that you can better understand what their needs are. You can better understand why they feel a certain way. And again, that's going to help you build trust with your team. And as you can tell, I said I loved Yoda. Clearly, I like small little wrinkled things. Look at this monkey. When I saw this monkey and this little quote here, I laughed. I have so much fun when we're looking for pictures and content when we're creating these. But read what it says. Do you know somebody like this? I bet you all do. You're talking to them. They might, nod a little bit. They might say, yeah, but they're not paying attention to a word you're saying, which goes back to that first slide. Are you being heard? But are you also listening? so that you can hear and you can create whatever the plan is that needs to be put into action. And so the number one thing that I always try to have the conversation with young leaders and leaders who have done this for a while, and knowing that they have to have a crucial conversation with somebody, is to make sure you are prepared mentally. If you aren't prepared mentally for a conversation that is important, then you're doing yourself a disservice and you're doing your team member a disservice. And you reschedule that meeting if it's something you're not prepared for. And then paraphrasing to show understanding is also going to help you make sure you're understanding, so that person is being heard, and then they are seeing that you actually understand what they're saying, which goes back to helping build trust because you're actually paying attention to them. And then demonstrating concern. As a leader, it's very important that your team members know what they're saying to you is important and that you care. They want to know that you care about what they are coming to you with. Whatever that conversation is, be sure to demonstrate concern. And then body language is super important. So as you're listening, some of the points that I make, you'll notice I'll lean in a little bit. It's not just because my back hurts. I will lean in a little bit. And nodding and different body language, eye contact. I am trying to continue to make eye contact with this camera, and it's important for me. I wish I could see you guys. I literally was at a dinner with my husband this weekend, and he leaned over to me and he said, "Do you notice the person that we're talking to is not making eye contact?" And I said, "Yeah." And it's really bothering me. And it made me not trust that person as much. And then I really started to pay attention to their mannerisms and different things that they were doing. And if you were there with me, I was kicking my husband under the table when I was like, "That was a lie. That was a lie." Needless to say, we won't be going to dinner with this person anymore. But think about it in business, and think about it when you're dealing with your teams. Make that eye contact so they know that you're focusing on them, and you're also watching how they're reacting to what you're saying. And then you can use those verbal affirmations to help you make sure that you're letting them know that you are listening, and then you're also letting them know you do understand, or they may have to repeat something that they're saying. The other thing that you can do, we've all heard this in sales, those of you that have been in a sales position before, whether it's in leasing or if it's our supplier friends that are on the line today, but open-ended and clarifying questions are going to help you uncover what somebody is really saying. So be sure not to just ask yes or no questions. Be sure to ask those open-ended questions so that you can really better understand what is it that they really want. Because sometimes you start a conversation with your team member, and what they ask you for in the beginning has nothing to do with what they really want. And then wait to disclose your opinion. I have seen conversations shut down so quickly, because if you're in a leadership role, and depending on if you're a newer leader or maybe a leader that's been around a long time, your team members may feel like once you've said your opinion, there is no more discussion. So be sure to hear what it is that they have to say before you make that opinion. And then sharing similar experiences. We talked earlier about storytelling. This is that exact same thing. You can share experiences to let them know that you do understand, but I will give you a word of caution. Don't be that tit for tat person. Don't be that person that for every one point they try to make, you have to one up them, because that really is annoying too. So be careful with that one. And then, as you all know, at the end, make sure you summarize what was said so everybody understands what's next. What are the marching orders? Where do we go from here? What are the action items? And then this last one, I wish I didn't have to put it on here, but unfortunately, as there's so many distractions that are out there, this says put away your phone, put away your laptop, put away your electronics, and make sure you're focused. Your team member needs to know that the conversation you are having is very important. And an example that I'd love to share with you, I actually saw it in action, and it was Stephanie. She was on the phone with one of her team members that was a little nervous about something that had happened at one of their properties. And I literally watched this, Stephanie, I didn't tell you this, but I literally watched Stephanie take her phone. Well, she had her phone, she had her laptop, she shut it down, she sat back and she listened, she took some notes, She asked some clarifying questions. And then at the end, she came back to that individual and she was able to tell them what to do. She made sure that the other person understood. And if there was any clarifying that needed to be done, she did that. And the person that she was on the phone with, and this was just a phone call, was very high pitched in their tone when they called because they were nervous. And sometimes we get nervous and high pitched in a situation. By the end of that call, I literally felt as if I was in that person's shoes and I felt their anxiety go down because she was able to calm them down and hear them out and tell them how to handle that situation. Stephanie, I have to say, right on. You did an amazing job.
Well, I read your slides. So that's how we were working on this section. And I was like, this is what I'm going to do. Exactly.
That's what it was. That's what it was. And so with that, with trust, with listening, with better communication, you all have the opportunity to have higher employee engagement. And Gallup put out a study. They looked at over 100,000 business units. And what they found, in fact, looks very similar to companies that have higher trust. They found that engaged employees have higher productivity. You want your team members to be engaged. There's more customer loyalty, which means for the business we're in, more renewals. And I mean renewals for our owner operators, and I mean renewals for our supplier partners. And then better safety. It is something as leaders we have to think about is the safety of our teams. And then there's also lower turnover. And in the climate and in the environment that we're in, lower turnover for our employees is incredibly important. It's incredibly important to keep those team members that you need on your teams that know what they're doing. And so you want them to be engaged. Stephanie's going to talk about that here in a minute, and we'll spend a little time at the end as well. And then, of course, higher profitability. We're all in the business, and it's not just to give away our time and be volunteers as much as we love it. We are in the business to hopefully have a profit and make a difference in our residents' lives. So with that, Stephanie's going to take us in and share with us how we can work on employee engagement.
Yeah, employee engagement in this day and age, I hear it all the time, whether I'm on property or whether I'm at the corporate office or in training sessions like this. It's getting people to care about what they're doing in such a tumultuous environment, So we're going to talk about what is detracting and taking away from our team members being empowered and being engaged. We have this personal life work balance situation that everyone talks about. I need to feel like I'm giving at home. I need to feel like I'm giving at work, and that balance of what that is. We're going to talk a little bit about that. We're going to also talk about giving that meaning and that worthiness to what we're doing as a job. What we do is a very admirable position and profession, and it is a profession. We're providing homes for people. Everybody needs a home to live in. And so creating as good of an environment as we can and creating meaning in what we're doing is certainly important. And that's challenging when we've got so many people that are treating us not in such a good way. The treatment by customers has really, I am answering more complaints than I ever have in my entire career right now. I know my team members are frustrated. And so, that treatment from customers and residents is detracting from the engagement. People are tired. If anybody is on Facebook and they're reading that property management support group, there's so much on there about I'm just tired, I'm done, I'm sick of people yelling at me. So how can we remotivate and re-engage those people? And then finally, we're going to talk a little bit about compensation, because it's challenging when we have Chick-fil-A offering the same amount to our leasing agents, not having to work on Sundays and having all the support systems that we offer in our leasing offices. So the biggest thing to understand is that lack of engagement was not caused by COVID. If you look at these numbers from 2000 to 2022, they are not that different. So there has been a pattern of engagement, lack of engagement, and people actively being disengaged in their job. And those actively disengaged people are the ones that cause the drama in the office. They're the ones that say, oh, I'm quitting next week. They're the ones that are doing things to actively participate and have an environment that's disengaging for others. So nothing's changed. COVID has just sparked us into making a change because we all found out that life is too short, right? So COVID didn't do this, but it certainly gave us all an idea of where we are. So where does change start? It starts with you. It starts with your employees. It starts with your individual, because we have got to make the change. You cannot engage employees on your own. You can guide them and support them in the transition and in the engagement. You cannot, what's the saying? You can't take a horse to water. You can't make a horse drink. You can just take him to water, right? And so we've got to actively work on making sure our people are changing for themselves. So in doing that, 28% of the workers start their day before 8:30 in the morning. I know I do. I'm up in the morning trying to get things done. I've got a reputation of answering emails at 2 a.m. They're on their computers after hours. The remote capabilities that we have with our phones and with our computers has changed the way of life, and it's causing more burnout. It's causing more disengagement. 74% of work is done during normal business hours, but 26 is done on nights and weekends. So when you think about that, 1/4 of the time you're doing on those other times, which is okay if that's the plan, right? Like maybe I've got a plan, I've got a kid thing on Friday, and I know I'm going to take the day off and I'm going to take that time to catch up on the weekend. That's fine. But are we forcing our teams to do this because of the messages that we're sending about what things look like? I don't know. Maybe we are doing this. So all of these stats, super important, but what are we doing and how can we change those things? What do we need to do? Number one, how do we support that life balance? We ask people to change, and then we're going to change our leaders. We need to make sure we're training our leaders on what needs to be done. Those of you that are on this call are the leaders within your organization, but you're training tomorrow's leaders, because even if you're leading, from the corporate office, those leasing agents are leading residents. And so if you look about it that way, I say all the time, I'm here to train you, you're here to train your residents. And if we can do that, it creates a much better environment for our team members. So how do we do that? Well, times have changed. And I'm getting to be a middle-aged old lady now, and I can say that, right? The things and the challenges that I had with different generations, things have changed and times have changed on how we need to train and motivate our team members. What they are motivated by and what they're engaged by have completely changed from what they were before. So there are 3 things that you need to work on, and these are the things that can help determine life balance. Your job is to guide them. So helping your team create a connection in the workplace is super important. Make them find and feel connected and supported in what they do. Mindy talked about that earlier with communication, making sure that they feel heard, that they feel connected. I don't think we have a huge problem. I certainly know in the Houston market where I am, that connection to the people in our industry is super strong. And so, feeling like you're connected to people, whether it's at your organization or in the multifamily industry in general, is something that we can facilitate. We know how to do that. We know how to find connections with people. And so supporting your teams in doing that, super important. And then allowing your people to have control over things. Not a control freak like me, but having control on their opinions, on their options, having more flexibility in what they do, making them feel heard and giving them the option to pursue things in their career makes them feel connected and makes them feel like they have more of a work-life balance. I'm choosing to take this position, or I'm choosing not to take this position, not feeling forced in a way that is controlling over them, but giving them control over their decisions is important. And then lastly is motivation. What is motivating my team? What is motivating me independently? Focusing on those motivations to create balance. Is it time? I said early on when I was changing careers that the number one thing for me is flexibility. I want to have flexibility and control over my time. That may mean that I work on weekends so that I have the freedom to do what I need to do flexible wise. I recently hired someone that's been in the business for 20 years and worked at the corporate office, and she was having to go in every day at 8:30 and leave every day at 5:30 with very little flexibility. And, while our on-site teams are doing that to support the residents, having some flexibility and working with people in trying times is very much going to help them with their work-life balance. They're not having to choose and make a decision between having a career and having my personal life. So connection, control, and motivation, and changing the idea of what the ideal worker looks like. A super mom that can carry her baby and walk property with her briefcase in her high heels is is not necessarily what we want the perfect employee or team member to look like now. This has morphed into something different. Having empathy, making sure that we have that life balance makes everybody happier, and happy people in the office make happy residents. You can tell the difference when you're in an office. So promote your community, making sure that you're changing that ideal worker. Ask those tough questions. Mindy mentioned it earlier about communication. Caring and asking those personal questions about people, providing time off for community events, being flexible, showing them that they have control over their time is super important in showing that you care. Ask those questions. How are the kids? How did the National Honor Society event go last night? How did the soccer game go? Are they in the finals? All of those things are things that show you're making a connection and you're caring about the team members that you're leading. So Jedi mind tricks, I'm taking this from Mindy. Change I must or die I will. Your job as a leader is to take those people that are not changing and not adapting and not seeing things differently and guide them and support them in the way that focuses on their future. If you can guide them to be more engaged, it's going to make them more profitable to you and happier in their work job. So, we're in a time frame when we have multiple generations. We've got all kinds of generations on this call. We have Kelly, we've got Lisa, Linda, Madison, Monica, all of these different age groups that are on this call. Let's go to the next slide and talk a little bit about what is motivating each of those generations. We looked at employees by generation, and we asked, what are the most important things to you about an organization? And you'll see many people in this young millennial generation, they want an organization that cares about their well-being. How do you show that as a leader? That's something you've got to figure out, because you may be working for an organization that doesn't necessarily send a message or have a platform where they are automatically and frequently talking about employees' well-being. They feel it, but they aren't blaring it from the hilltops. So how do you as a leader deliver that message to those team members? And then you can go down to the baby boomers, which are looking for an ethical organization, that the leadership is a good example of high ethics. So whatever order these are in for the people that you're dealing with, we're going to talk about personality types in a little bit, but think about those personality types and what is motivating them within the organization, and that will help you better determine how you're going to lead those individuals based on what they need. So make sure that you're justifying your decisions. If you have a baby boomer that's worried about ethics within an organization, justify and don't just say no like an angry cat. Right? We want to make sure that we're explaining and justifying things based on the core values. One of the core values of my organization, Q10, is flexibility. I interview people for curiosity and flexibility. Those are the two things. And so frequently, every time I have to make a tough decision about something, I make that decision based on what our ethics are. When I have a supervisor that comes to me and says, hey, this employee wants to be off on Saturdays and, close the office on Saturday, but she wants to be open later on Mondays and Tuesdays. Are we flexible in that? So when you're delivering that, make sure that you're making the decisions, justifying them, and letting the team know that you're making those decisions based on what the core beliefs of the organization are. People want to know the why of why the decisions are made, and this will improve engagement with your team members. So think about that. And that helps to know what the core values of your organization are, by the way. So make sure you know that. As we move into this compensation part of what we're talking about for engagement, a survey conducted at a women's conference, and I see lots of women and men on the call today, Rhonda and Mallory and Monica, they found that nearly 80% of the respondents would rather have a boss who cared about them, finding meaning and success in their work, than receive a pay increase. I think this tells us two things. The first is that we are craving to feel connection with people and to feel validated and supported. And while pay is important, it's important to all of us. If the other part of what we do is not there, then taking a job for way more money isn't going to last long. And you're going to do it half-heartedly. So if you're not finding that connection in your job, you need to work on that. If you're not providing that connection for your team members, you need to make sure that you're doing that. And then 9 out of 10 employees found are willing to take a percentage of their lifetime earnings and convert it to have a greater meaning in what they do. So always focusing on what the meaning is of what we do is super important in making sure that our team members are validated. Make sure that you're pointing out to them in those leadership opportunities the value of what they provide to the residents, the value of what they provide to each other. You know, you're not letting me down, you're letting your team down. And so those are super important when you're dealing with leadership and engagement with team members. So regarding pay, again, when Chick-fil-A and Hobby Lobby are offering the same amount that we offer, and we're asking people to go and work overtime or work after hours. So I included, you know, look within your organizations and see what kind of data you have. You may not be able to reach the benchmarks that everyone else in your city is offering, but knowing that the pay is increasing over time, providing feedback and knowing the tools that you need to face an employee coming to you saying, I need to be paid more, is super important. You know, Jay Turner does this for us in the Houston market. I know they do it for other markets. So being informed on what other people in the same position are making and having that tool in your toolbox is super important when dealing with compensation. So I cannot tell you the amount of times that my daughter talks about Karens. She is 11 years old and she watches this girl on YouTube called the Karen Connoisseur. And she just collects all these Karen videos about people that go crazy. I can tell you, I have 25 Karens living at my properties. I know you guys probably do too. So how do we change those Karens? We do not want Karens or Kevins, or if your name, is there a Karen on the, hold on. I should see if there's a Karen on the call. Thank goodness. I didn't want to offend anybody. Karen's, Kelly, Stephanie's, whoever they are. Let's talk about dealing with those angry residents. Super simple, super simple. Seek feedback. Find out what is pissing your people off and fix it, okay? Then have a process for their concerns to be justified and heard. Simple. They make a complaint. Where does it go? How is it going to be handled? Then act on the issues quickly. If you can't make a change, like maybe the fitness center is under construction and everybody's upset about that, validate that concern and deal with it, okay? These are the issues and address it with the residents. And then allow for non-renewals. This is empowering your team. It is okay to not renew someone. I know that's crazy, but if you have a resident that is just causing concern, is beating up your people in the office, allow your team to have control over some of those non-renewals and replace them. You do not have to renew everyone. I cannot tell you the number of times I've had people complain to me about someone and I'll look and I'll be like, well, why did you renew them last month? If they've been a pain in your butt for 6 months, why did we renew them? So allow for that. And then require service initiatives. What does that mean? It means provide opportunities for them to do things socially and create a connection, whether it's an event at the office, whether it's a webinar, a Zoom, whatever that is, to provide connection within the office and with the residents. Maybe it's just breakfast on the go. Give customer service and events a priority within your office with the residents so that they can see and feel connected to those people in the office. It's hard to be mean to someone that you like or that offers you donuts in the morning. Okay, so all of this adds up to having a better bottom line, whether it's a senior community, whether it's a college community, whether it's a standard conventional community. The people have a higher satisfaction, higher employee morale are going to result in higher occupancy in your properties. The data says it. I don't have to make it up. The data says it. So if we can work on those key values, it's really going to do a lot in raising our occupancy overall. So I'm going to turn it over to Mindy, and she's going to talk about some stuff, and then we're going to finish up in just a little bit with some neat tools to take home.
So you guys, there's a lot of things that you can do to inspire your teams. And I wanted to leave you with these 4 that you can take back and actually put into place as you're dealing with your employees, and not even your employees, just other team members, because we are all one team. We all have a goal to take care of our residents, to take care of our clients, to really excel in this industry and make it a better place for everybody. And so one thing that you can do to help your team members out when you do have to have that difficult conversation, or you have to have something where something needs to be corrected, there's a method that you can use called the 5-to-1 method. And basically, it's very simple. For every one piece of constructive criticism that you have to give, for one opportunity for improvement, you give 5 other examples of things that they're doing very well. Nobody wants to be criticized. They don't want to be called out. But if you do have that time with your team members, and I'm sure you can think of several, make sure you're backing it up also with things that they're doing well, so you continue to have them motivated. So remember the 5-to-1 method, and then praising your team members on the spot. Everyone craves recognition. And as leaders, sometimes we get really busy and we see something great that happens and we put in the back of our mind, oh, we're going to tell them about that later. I'll be sure to bring it up. I'll send a card. I'll email them. And then we get too busy. Let's face it, the industry that we're in, the time of the year that we're in right now, we're all slammed. We've got so many things on our to-do list. Stephanie, a session for leadership time management would be a great one too. But we've got so many things on our plate that when you do see the opportunity, praise that team member on the spot. And when you can do it in front of others, be sure to do it and acknowledge them in front of others publicly when you can, especially when it's in front of your other team members, because that team member that you're recognizing is going to really appreciate it. And the others around are going to want to do more. They may just step up their game. And the other thing that I think is a great thing for you guys to do is finding more creative ways to reward good behavior. So for our on-site teams, they're always trying to find creative ways to bring a sense of community at the property, to do outside the box ideas for the residents and activities. We all know how outside the box we had to get during COVID. But think about this for your team members. Make it individual, not the standard pizza party, not the standard maybe an hour off. Maybe that's what's important to your team member. But I had an interview with a manager actually on one of our podcasts, and she excels in customer service. She also excels in employee retention and building leaders. And one of the things that she's done, and maybe some of you that are on this webinar today do this, but I really like the fact that she takes the time to meet all of her team members. For where she was at, she had 17 different people on her team. And for each one of them, she knows when their birthday is, she knows their favorite dessert, their favorite food, what they do for hobbies, what their interests are outside of work, what their favorite thing is about their position. And so anytime there's an opportunity to reward that employee or to recognize them for a birthday, instead of buying her favorite cake, she buys their favorite cake. If they don't like dessert, she finds out what they like. And so she is building a team of those that trust her and want to do a good job for her. And the engagement at this property is through the roof. The resident satisfaction is through the roof. Their online reviews are through the roof. And it's because these team members are engaged, and she's taken the time to get to know them and to listen to them. And so finding different ways to reward good behavior and just recognize your teams is super important. And I highly encourage you to do that. And then also, one of the things that I love to share whenever I get the opportunity, if you guys will go to your Slido again, go to the polls, I want you to name this book. So there is a book that was written in 1936 that some of you that are on today may have read, but I like to call it a blueprint for life. It truly did change my life as a young person starting my career in the industry. And I'm super curious to know if just in this poll, you can go and type in the name. If anybody knows of an older book that was written that you can go back and read, and the principles of it today still apply. We have how to make friends and influence others. Okay, we've got some more. Let's see. Somebody else is typing. Come on, take a guess. Let's see if you know. I wish I could see in the chat, and I can't right now. 1 Minute Manager. Okay, that's a good one. So, and because of time, and we want to make sure that we have time for questions in the end, I'm going to go ahead and show you. We've got one more participant that's typing in. Let's see if they can get it. So the 1936 book that was written for managers, how to make friends and influence people, how to deal with difficult people. Oh, Stephanie, that's a whole nother session that we could do. So that book, you guys, is How to Win Friends and Influence People. You can read this book today. I'd love to see in the chat. We'll go back through and look at that. I'm curious to know how many people have actually read that book. If you haven't, go out and get it. When I first started my career with Graystar many years ago, I always joke around and say when I was 2, I was a marketing specialist for Graystar, and I was on a plane flying out to all places, Midland, Texas. And the gentleman that was sitting next to me happened to be the owner of the property that I was flying out to. I had no idea this property was struggling. They sent me out there to hopefully make a difference, rewrite their marketing plans, and get them to the occupants that they needed. And we struck up a conversation, and he shared this book with me. And as soon as I could get to the bookstore, because we had to do that back then, right? Go to the physical bookstore. I went and I bought this book and I read it. I didn't just read it one time, I read it 3 times, and I highlighted in that book and I went back to it for reference. As a manager, as a leader, as somebody in our industry, in any part of having to influence others, leaders have to influence others all the time. The principles of this book still will be valuable for you today. So I highly encourage you to read it. And if you haven't read it in a while, I highly encourage you to go back and read it again. And then don't do this. How to lose friends and annoy people. It can happen. And as young leaders, there are certain things that you might do that are annoying. And so you have to be really self-aware. And another way that you can really annoy people is by criticizing. We've alluded to it, we've said it. As young managers, and even as managers that have been in our position for quite some time, I see where in order to try and make yourself look better, sometimes you point out things about others, maybe in even a leadership role above yours. And you point out the whys of why you can't do something, and it becomes a blame game or a criticism game. And when you do that, the thing is it might make you feel better just for a minute or two, but think about the credibility you're losing, or maybe it's not even you. What about the credibility of your organization? So be really careful about criticizing, and also always keep in mind how much individuals really dread condemnation. So if you are going to look for those opportunities for improvement, that constructive criticism, go back to that 5-to-1 method that we talked about earlier. For every one opportunity of improvement, make sure you're bringing up 5 other things that they're doing well. And then
Mindy, real quick, I'm going to jump in just real quick. We are looking at about 7 minutes, you guys, and we're probably going to go over because we've got such great tools at the end to give you. So I want to let you know we're going to keep going and probably go through the hour limit because this will be recorded and you can get it later. So if you have to drop off, we hate that you do, but feel free to. And then if you have questions, we're going to keep going through that. So just for those of you that have to drop off, that's okay. You're going to see the end and you'll be able to record it, but we are going to go over the time limit. So the rest of you, if you can stay on, that's great. Okay, thank you.
Yes, and we hope you can stay on. I'll try to go through these relatively quickly. And I love this quote where it talks about some leaders. And if we think of new leaders and leaders that are newer to their position, they want to be thought of really highly. But look at what it says down here. The goal of a great leader is to help people think more highly of themselves. You want to build your teams up. You want to motivate them. You want to encourage them. That is a good leader. And I promise you, when you do that, it will be noticed and you will be a great leader. And really good leaders know it's not about how many followers you have. It's not about how many likes you have. It truly is about how many people you inspire and how many leaders you create. I also think that every single person that is on this webinar right now knows it's not about titles, right, friends? It's not. It's not about your position. It's not about your flow chart. It is literally, if you care about others and you want to be an amazing leader, it's about how many people can you influence. And I received a text a couple of weeks ago from a young leader who is growing. I'm actually very impressed with their work and what they're doing. And she sent me a text and she said, "Hey, I've noticed within my organization that there's not a great mentorship program out there. There's not a way to really build our bench, and I want to create that program. Can you help me with that? And absolutely, I'm going to help her with that. And she's also very smart. She's reaching out to other leaders to see how they're building their bench and what programs are out there. But what was really surprising to me when I reached out to some of my contacts and I asked them about that, because COVID changed so much, a lot of those mentorship programs and those building people up and showing them what would be next. And if you followed this pattern, and let's face it, there's this pattern that we think you start here and then you go here and then you go here, but we've seen a lot of this, right? But you want to give somebody guidance. And so we need to focus on how to train individuals and how to build our bench. And Stephanie's going to walk us through that.
Yes. This path that we think we have to follow from excited leasing agent to I'm going to collect money behind the scenes, and then I'm going to be mean to people because they got to pay their rent, and then, oh wait, I'm going to lead the entire team, is not a natural progression that feeds anybody's interests, right? So inspiring and building the leader on where they are in their career and making them feel validated in that position, knowing that there's options and control, is super important. So we're going to talk about inspiring and engaging leaders. We've talked about engagement, but some leadership training opportunities. How are we going to empower them to better delegate and better take on responsibilities, and then use people to the best of their talents possible? And then Mindy has some Workquake. It's a book. It's amazing to give you as a tool that really talks about building that leadership goal. So I mentioned earlier this connection and control and motivation. I want to go to that now so that we can build back on building that connection to make people empowered and make people engaged is also how we train them. People feel connected to one another. We have to create that connection to make them feel like they want to be trained. So we're engaging them in the process and they're feeling connected. You learn when you teach. And so providing opportunities for leaders to teach other people is super, super important when you're building leaders. And then let your team control things. Empower them to make mistakes in what they do, because that builds a better leader. It builds a better team. When they see the mistakes, they see how they have influenced and done things maybe in the not right way. They're supported by you in that, in making that mistake, and then we're knowing not to make that again. I can't tell you the number of times I have had people make bad decisions about things. The individual that called me was having a really hard time. She had a bad owner's call, was really upset, and some of the decisions that we made weren't great. So we worked through those issues, and those decisions aren't being made anymore, right? So making sure that we're giving them control over making decisions so that they can see. We know when we tell a child, don't touch the hot pan, don't touch the hot pan, they don't know it's hot until they touch it, right? So we need to let them have that experience so that they can see what they do and don't want to do. And then what motivates your team individually? Is it time? Is it money? Success? While we're building empowerment and engagement, we're also using those tools to build leadership and train our individuals. Figure out what that is. Figure out as we're knowing what people are doing and what they're motivated by, then we can go into this delegation process. You are delegating to them things to do. And in turn, we learn when we teach, we need to be able to teach them to delegate and release. This of all things is the most challenging skill a leader and an individual can use. Even if you're not like freaky over control, many people say it's so much easier if I just do it myself than to teach someone. Yeah, maybe, but hopefully your job is to be better and more in what you do. And you can't do that if you're still keeping track and doing those small tasks that could be delegated to someone else to build their career. Super important. So this walks you through that map of asking an employee to make a commitment to do something differently, delegating through that process. I love this. I use this and I reference this all the time with my teams when I'm delegating things. So this is a great tool for you guys to take home. So we promised earlier that there would be no mind tricks, but I think Mindy was kidding. There are going to be some mind tricks that we offer you. So let's talk about one of them. Everybody cares about WIFM. And for those of you that may be too young for this, Valerie, Vanessa, Vicky, Tanya that's on the call, WIFM is what is in it for me. And that's what we care about. You're not on this call because, because of some other reason. You want to know what's in it for me. What tools am I getting from spending my hour with Mindy and Stephanie? What is in it for me? And that is what your team members care about too. So best book ever, I mean, besides the ones that Mindy's recommended, The 5 Love Languages of Appreciation in the Workplace. Some of you may have heard about the 5 love languages in your relationships. And I say that the number one reason why relationships personally and professionally go wrong is false expectations. And so figuring out what the love language is of the people that you do work with is super important. How does that person treat other people? What does that person complain about? And what does that person request most often? I have team members that love their love language is recognition in front of other people. I have other people that just want a gift card and they want to be able to do whatever they want to do. And I can tell you if my gift card person is acknowledged in a public setting, it may not make them feel appreciated. It may make them feel like they're the center of attention, and that's not what they want. So figuring out how to motivate your people in the right way for them is super important. So this next slide gives you, this is again, just a takeaway for you. Words of affirmation, acts of service, quality time, gifts, and physical touch. Don't freak out, Susan Fine. I know Susan's freaking out about this personal touch thing with COVID, but what are the 5 love languages that motivate people and make them feel connected, make them feel appreciated? This gives you an idea of the description of language to use and importantly, some workplace examples. You have that maintenance guy that just wants a high five every time he changes an AC. You may have that. You may have someone that wants quality time. He wants to be able to go play soccer with his kids. So figuring out what makes everybody tick is going to help you be a better leader. Okay. Susan's giving me a hard time in the chat, by the way. Sometimes we just want to make sure that we know who we're dealing with. So we're going to find out what their love language is professionally so that we can make sure we're acknowledging that and feeding them the way they need to be fed. And the second thing we're going to do with all of our team members is work on some personality testing. So get out your phones right now. We're going to go on to the next slide. This is our angry cat. Do you know who you are dealing with? You need to know who you're dealing with on your teams. So there's 3 barcodes. You guys will get these slides later, but one is a color code test. The other is a scorecard on how to score it. And then you'll have a color guide. The reason why I love this personality test is because it's fairly short and there's only 4 colors, only 4. Classifies everybody into 4 different areas and gives you the tools you need to be able to communicate with them in a positive way. So next slide is going to give you those 4 colors. It talks about leadership style. Those barcodes are going to let you download the actual test so that you can give it to your team members, and that it'll give you a really good idea of what motivates them. Are they motivated by power, by intimacy, by fun? Are they just the peacemakers and they want no drama? Figuring out how they're motivated and then relating that back to their love language is going to help you really utilize the tools that we talked about today to empower, embolden, and engage your team members as you push them into leaders. So Mindy, you want to talk a little bit about your library of resources for them? Ooh,
If I unmute, these are some books and some resources that you guys can look at, you all can use. The one that's over in the left-hand corner called Workquake, I saw this gentleman at NMHC. His name is Steve Cadigan, and he wrote this book and he made a quote or said a quote that has really stood out to me. And he said, employees are no longer loyal to the company, they're loyal to learning. Think about that for a minute. You want to make sure that you're providing resources to your teams that they can use and they can grow in. You want to look at cross-training your employees. If they start to feel like they're getting stagnant and they're not learning anything new, there's a high likelihood that they're going to leave your organization. They want more. And we're no longer in that day and time where you're supposed to have this long-term tenure. Some people look at those that have had long-term tenure with organizations as, well, are they stagnant? Do they really have the skills that we need? And so staying at a company, let's say for 3 years, might not be the goal anymore. But if you do have employees and you continuously support their learning, like you guys, you all being on this call today, being on this webinar, it is important to provide those opportunities, to provide cross-training. And this book is a very simple read. You can read it from the employee side, and he also writes it from the employer side as well. And then there's other ones on here. I'm just really big on communication. In order to be a more effective communicator, if you're a more effective communicator, you're going to be a better leader. Hands down. If you can communicate well, it is definitely going to help you. And we all can use coaching in this area. So these are some books and some resources that you can utilize.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, having a library of options and things to refer back to. I mean, tools are what we're about, right? We need tools. So we talked about pitfalls in leadership today, what those mean, how to deal with them, how to delegate, what that looks like. We gave you that roadmap for delegation, and then worked on some things on how you motivate your teams, how you can get yourself motivated even in this challenging time. And then we talked a little bit about those leadership styles, how to acknowledge those love languages in work, and how to figure out who are you dealing with. So hopefully you guys got some good information. You know, my goal as a presenter is always to give you 2 or 3 things that you can take back to utilize immediately. And so Mindy and I agree with this. We love working together because we're both about takeaways. What can I do immediately to change what I do, 1 or 2 things in our day-to-day lives? So how can you get a hold of us? This is us. If you liked what you see, we have really great fun things planned for this year. Mindy and I are hosting a cruise of training in December. So if you at all like vacationing and you're interested in seeing both of us train in that capacity, we're doing something in December. You can look at that information. And then we'll be training and teaching at NAA and different things. Mindy's an apartment all-star, so you can see her on the road. But if you liked what you saw today, please let us know. We'd be happy to provide you some more feedback, and would love to see you. And then for NAA, go ahead, Mindy.
Yes, if you've got questions, definitely reach out to us. I know we went over time just a little bit. We apologize. There's just so much good information to provide to you guys. And I know NAA wants to come back and share a few things. And don't forget, if you're not registered for Apartmentalize, it's in sunny San Diego. What an amazing place to be. Stephanie and I will both be there, and we hope to see you there also.
Yeah, super excited. And Stephanie will be there. The other Stephanie will be there.
Yes, Stephanie with an F.
I will be there. I will be there. Well, thank you all.
And Eric is going to be there. Is Eric going to be there?
Eric is going to be there
and presenting for the first time. So I'm super excited.
Wonderful. That is so great. We will see all of you there, hopefully.
Yes, absolutely. All right. Well, before we close, first, I want to say thank you to all of you for your awesome presentation today. Thank you, Eric, for moderating for us and introducing Mindy and Stephanie before they kicked off their presentation. Such awesome information. And before we close, I want to let you know that we are currently accepting applications for the Alexandra Jacque Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Scholarship, as well as the Innovation and Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Grant. The deadline to apply for both of those programs is July 29th, and you can check out the link on your screen for more information. And next slide. And our next Gen webinar will be on July 19th at 2 p.m. Selling Yourself, Develop Your Personal Brand with Megan Orser. So please register and join us then. And then hopefully we will be seeing you in June at Apartmentalize. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, guys. Thank you, guys. Have a great day.
Have a great day. And if you had questions, reach out to us. We apologize. We ran out of time to ask those questions.
Okay, bye-bye, everyone.
Bye, everybody.